You're good.
All right. Welcome, guys, to Cake. As always, we're totally donation-based, so feel free to donate online or toss some shekels into our little box here. Today we're going to be talking about selling, and I guess before we get into that, this is going to be one of our last cakes that we're having. We've been going almost a year now, which is really exciting. And coming up here in January, which will be our anniversary, we'll be kind of shifting the format a little bit. So more on that to come, but we're still going to have free monthly gatherings for people to come out to who actually want to visit us. Okay, so without further ado, into selling, which honestly I think has kind of a bad rep on the street. And a lot of people I find are even unwilling to learn about selling like they are about other business techniques, simply because it's associated so strongly with kind of being really shisty or hokey or like scamming people even, which it doesn't have to be. And it gets that kind of name, I think, because of just the circumstances which feed it, which is basically if a large organization mostly can make an equation that says, like, we are willing to pay these people this much to spend their time calling total strangers or whoever and selling them on this thing, and if they make one sale every so many hours, then we've turned a profit, so it's worth annoying all of these other people who hang up, then that's a profitable equation, and it makes sense for the business to actually do that. But it doesn't make sense for you to spend your time doing that as like the sole business owner. Like, that's not an equation that will make sense in your life. Nor is it just like an emotional equation for happiness, I think, or feeling like you're doing something meaningful. And in fact, you're contributing a lot to a lot of wasted time, both of your employee, the people you're calling, and ultimately just the world. And time is such a valuable commodity. I mean, you know, if you're a business owner, like how valuable time is, that I think wasting it is a terrible sin. So we're going to kind of just delve in and uncover a little bit of the roots of sales and what it's actually, like, what purpose it's serving. And then we're going to kind of figure out the things, like how to do sales in a way that makes sense and doesn't make you feel icky about it. And you'll realize that a lot of people are doing sales all the time, and you're actually really grateful for it. Salespeople are kind of your best friend, and if you do it right, then people, like, when you're giving them sales pitches and calling them, are actually, like, thanking you for taking the time to do that. So basically, like a broad scope, like zooming out a little bit, your business provides a good or a service, and people find out about it, and people decide that they want it, and people pay you money for it. That's kind of like the full, like, pipeline of a successful business. I guess, like, you know, then there's, like, people tell other people about it and that they should buy it too, if you want to throw in the word of mouth loop. But so the first one in there, which is your business provides a good or service, is your production. That's your, like, research and development. People discover it. That's kind of marketing. That's how you get the word out, right? How you, whatever path you decide to go, whether it's social media or word of mouth or just buying ads. And then people decide they want to buy it. That's sort of where the sales fits into the process usually, that third point. Is what we're talking about. So people deciding that they want something. And people discovering it too. Like when we're talking about those icky cold sales calls, really what we're talking about is that like switching that sales process just a little earlier. So people are discovering it through the salesman who's contacting them, which is when things get a little icky. Or contacting cold leads, as we call it. So the goal really is to prime those first two those first two parts, your good or service actually being really high quality, and people discovering it, making your marketing so good that people actually know about you, so that when you get to that third part, the people deciding that they want it, and your goal is to make them want it, like, a lot of the work is already done for you, a lot of the heavy lifting. So a lot of this is really preloading, and generating good leads for your sales process will make your life so much easier. And it's interesting, too, because a lot of modern business and a lot of modern culture sort of usurps this kind of classic view of sales. Basically, we have more and more techniques to reach more and more targeted people, and we have more and more ways that we can generate those hot leads. Websites are a really good example. I mean, websites fulfill the job of so many things that used to be taken up by actual man hours in the past. We used to have like some kind of yellow book listing. Before that, we just like post up a sign on the wall. You used to have to take out tons of advertising. You used to have to hire salespeople to make pitches to other customers, or pay for like giant whole page ads. Like, can you imagine the content that's on your average business website trying to be presented to the public, either in the yellow book or like in an actual ad taken out in a paper or just like on the side of your building? Like, you have such a tremendous opportunity these days to get so much story and so much content out to people. And that's where a lot of your sales will happen. So in a normal business, especially a really big business, which is what we think of when we're thinking of like a whole sales department or a sales team. We're usually thinking big business kind of level. The sales department is often separate from the manufacturing, and by often I mean like almost all the time, which is separate from the marketing department, which is separate from retail or in-store displays, which is separate from like the people who are actually running the retail and in-store displays. And in my opinion, it leads to insanity, and that's where you actually get a lot of stereotypes for bad salesmen, is from this kind of model of separation, because the salespeople, like, their job is to make that sale and to get the money. Like, they don't care what came beforehand or if the product that they're actually selling like matches even what they said that it's going to do. Like, they care about closing that sale. And same on the inside of that is lowering the amount, like, they don't have to deal with the customer support calls that are coming in from them promising a feature that didn't quite exist. And we're talking now too about, kind of like the lowest common denominator. Like, big business does not have to be like that, and there are lots of big businesses where it's tied in much more closely to things. And some, even the salespeople, are the ones who are also planning the marketing campaigns and are even pitching in on product design. And they're also the ones who have to answer the support emails. And I think that is a much more sane way to do it, because you kind of like naturally feel the pain of whatever like bad promises you're making. And in your startup, you do everything. Like, if you make bad, like, false promises, you'll be handling the angry customer, and you'll be taking the complaints as it goes along, giving all the refunds. And it's much more sane, but it also means that it's a lot harder just to like make those cold calls. And so what we're proposing is a totally different method from that, which we'll get into, which is basically the customer development model, just to give you a little sneak peek at it. So let's talk about kind of a lot of basic sales stuff and demystify it a little bit. So we have context, like there's in-person, like door-to-door sales, right? And then there's phone, there's Skype now and video Skype, there's email, there's web-based sales, there's chat. There's all kinds of different ways that you can communicate with the people you're trying to reach. And the way I like to think about it is basically like the further you get away from having a pajama sleepover with the person you're trying to sell, like the worse off you are. Like, everything is kind of a compromise going to that. So like pajama sleepover, like, you win, like, you'll probably close that sale because you've already made it to that point, In person is great. You actually get to communicate, you get to have a really quick back and forth, you get to pick up on all of that, whatever, like 200% of our communication, which is nonverbal. Then you go to like video chat, then you go down to phone call, then you go down to you're writing an email. And you can be a really good writer, but most people aren't. So that's probably going to distance you even further. And at the very least, you, once again, don't get those crazy amounts of nonverbal cues. So the reason that we compromise that, and we don't just go and talk to every single person that we want to sell face-to-face, is that it takes a lot of time. So that's what you gain. Like, every step away from someone that you're going, you gain some kind of save in time. And you want to make sure, too, and you can almost do the calculations on this if you're a total nerd and really into the numbers like I am, but if you're actually figuring out the amounts of sales that you close compared to the amount of people you're contacting, you can really easily balance out that equation for how much money it's costing you to do different marketing things. And what I would say is that also what doesn't get factored into this equation, this is kind of like me getting up on some kind of startup moral high ground a little bit, is the that time wasting thing, which is if you're still not making quite as much money, but you're contacting 1/100th as many people and actually closing that 1 out of the 100, you're wasting so many people's time a lot less. And it's almost worth it. I really enjoy the phone conversations, the face-to-face time, whatever it is that you can actually get. And that's also, I believe, where a lot of deep understanding comes from people, is from those really long conversations. So just trying to like slap something together, even make a phone call and get a sale right from that phone call, or slap together an email and expect that email to lead straight to a sale, is really silly. And that's for down the road too. Like we're talking now about early stage, getting something ready to sell. Down the road, you have your sales pitch so down, hopefully you can craft an email and have someone click on it and buy it. But for right now, we're still just trying to figure out that pitch, get to that early point. Hard sales and soft sales. Hard sales are direct and forceful. That's a lot of what we think of when we're thinking of sales. Soft sales are more subtle and casual. And most statistics, too, just on the effectiveness of different sales techniques favor soft sales for even being more effective at actually closing the deal and getting people to go on board. And serves the double purpose of you don't piss people off and they actually like you afterwards and are more willing to come back. You might have heard the terms cold leads, hot leads, warm leads, sizzling leads. I made that one up. That doesn't actually, I don't know, someone's probably used it. Contacting warm and hot leads is freaking awesome. Like, it does not even feel like making a sales call. You get to feel like a rock star, and they just, like, thank you for pitching them on something. It's great, because, like, they want it. They've told you, they've expressed to you somehow, whether it's through their actions or actually saying to you, like, I want this thing, that they're interested in it. And you get to call and tell them all about it, and they're really stoked, and they get to tell you all about this terrible problem that they're facing, which is why they want this product that you're offering or service. Cold sales really suck, and it's really frustrating, and you feel bad about yourself, and people hang up on you. And pushing that, once again, like pushing sales onto the job that marketing is supposed to be doing leads to just unhappiness. So a lot of your success and a lot of your personal joy, just in life and running your business, comes from setting up good leads, from setting up these warm and these hot leads so that your conversations can be really pleasant and they feel more like conversations and less like you're just trying to like get money out of someone. So we'll get into customer development in a second, but let's think a little bit about that sales pipeline, which we started talking about just briefly. So we have this idea of, you know, you have something, you need to get it to someone, they're going to pay you money. Beyond that, there's this whole thing called sales pipelining, which you can look into, and it goes really deep, and it seems to be like where a lot of sales mathematicians end up nerding out on things, so there's tons of crazy, crazy literature on it. But basically it's just, how do you get them from wherever your potential customer is, not knowing about you, or maybe even that your thing exists or that they want it, into being a paying customer. And so you just pretty much funnel that the entire way along is the way you want to set this up, from like, and just lay out all the different paths. And it makes sense if you think about it kind of just logically. So we're talking about like, okay, discovery, like how do they find you? Great, you have a website, you have AdWords, you have a guest blog that you post on, you have whatever it is. And that's kind of called the funnel. Like you need something to grab their attention and pull them in. So then you have like a link back on that blog that goes back to your website, or your Google AdWords goes to a specific landing page, or whatever it is. Thank you. And so that takes them to more information. And the best advice I kind of ever heard on the sales pipeline or anything like that was from a direct marketer back in the day, you know, who were sending out tens of thousands of actual just bulk letters, like physically to your address. And he was basically saying that the goal of any stage in that sales process is to just get them to take the next step. Like the goal of the envelope when you're sending them something is just to get them to open that envelope. And the goal of whatever it is that they see when they first open is just to get them to pull it out. And the goal of like that folded up letter is just to get them to open it. And the goal of like that first sentence is just to get them to read the second sentence. And it's a really easy way to kind of break down the whole sales process as well. Which is once they've like found your website, the goal is to get them to read that little bit of text and click on this button. And the goal then is to get them to, etc. From there, you know, obviously it goes straight through. So then there's all kinds of little sub pipelines that go into that too. Like what if someone has gone to your website and has decided they want to click on something to buy, but then just leaves it in their cart and doesn't ever finish the order process? Like what do you do then? Well, then you have like an email that gets sent out 2 days later saying that they like forgot to buy and offering them a little bit of a discount and try to reel them back in, etc. Like maybe when you first go to their website, well, what if like the people who are going to your website aren't adding anything to the cart? Then maybe you need something right when they hit to try and capture their email address, which is why you have all of those like pop-up things that go and are like, hey, what's your email address? When you first visit websites, which are incredibly effective, by the way, if you're doing anything web-related. It turns out capturing, like throwing up a little pop-up to capture someone's email address and then just like, you know, you close it immediately and it never pops back up because you have a cookie or something, like up to, yeah, like 1 out of 3 people who visit websites will fill those out, which is crazy. Um, so that's the idea behind a pipeline, and then someone, actually gets to the checkout, someone pays you money, then you have the pipeline of how do you get follow-up sales, like after a month if they've purchased something, do you send them another email saying like, hey, noticed you purchased something a month ago, how's it going for you? Also, we've launched this new product. All of that, you just try to think through every behavior that the customer could possibly take and make sure that you sort of have a way to either pull them in or reel them back in or just check in with them and make sure they're doing all right. So that's the idea behind the pipeline. Once again, that's a whole nother deep topic that you can just like look into and nerd out on your own. And the last thing I'll say about that is web pages now play just such an integral part of that pipeline. They're, like I said, your yellow page listing, they're your advertising, and they are your biggest salesmen too. You have all of that content on your website to basically say whatever it is that in the past we were paying salespeople to call up our customers and say to them. Only now you're directing people who are actually interested in what you have to say. They can click away in a second so you don't have to feel guilty about it. So really, your website should be your number one salesperson. Like that should be where you are getting those email addresses, where you are getting people to fill out that information on whether or not they want to hear from you ever again. Offering something for free for them to get from your website, a free e-course, a free webinar, a free PDF download, something like that so they're actually engaging with you, can test your quality, but also so that you actually know they're interested at least enough to get something free from you. And at that point, you can then kind of try to contact them and try to upsell them on something or try to actually, even more than that, figure out what the hell's going on with them and why they wanted this free thing to begin with. So that takes us to the bulk of what I had to say. It's a lot of background to get here. But the customer development model has just been taking off recently, and I've just been trying it on my own on this new project that I've been working on. It's been going so incredibly both pleasantly and successfully. And it just makes so much sense too. And I think the only reason we didn't have it as much before was because I guess the internet helps a lot, but like really I guess it's just like we kind of like got ahead of ourselves as far as complexity goes, and like getting back to the basics is really simple. So the idea is that we have this model set up in business in general that goes, okay, we make something or we come up with an idea, right? And then we sort of perfect it and like spend a lot of time testing it, and then we market it and put together all of our marketing plans, and then we go out and we try to sell it. And the basic premise behind customer development is just taking that, selling it at the end after marketing, and switching it to the very beginning. So like before you market your product, before you've even made your product or have it like in creation, try to sell it. And then go forward from there. Then once you've like actually sold it, then you go and make it, and then you go and market it. So breaking down a little further, the exact kind of formula for it is you have an idea or not. You don't even have to have an idea. You can just want to do something useful for a group of people. And from there, you just start visiting them or calling them or emailing them or whatever it is to extract a lot of information from them and start having conversations. Text Expander helps a ton with emailing people really fast. That's the Mac program, and the non-Mac version is Phrase Express. Basically, it just lets you enter in a little text snippet, and then through a few hotkeys or just typing in like a string of letters, it'll auto-expand that into whatever it is that you wanted to write out, which just works really inline. You don't have to like even memorize like Command Shift 4 or something to do it. It's just like you type in like B phone ? And it like expands out to like however many paragraphs or sentences or whatever you wanted. So
it actually allows you to have macros, so you just fill in the customized blanks, and you have a unique email for every person you're sending out, so it's personalized.
Yeah, so really useful, but great for answering those quick things or following this process with everyone that you have to contact and do all of these follow-up emails on, because you're making, by deciding to do customer development process, first of all, you're just like consigning yourself to a lot of conversations with people, which if you're not willing to have, then you just kind of have to like backload that, and the pain is instead going to come in making a lot of unfortunate sales calls. So you kind of get to decide, like, a lot of just long conversations where it seems like nothing is getting done, but you're actually finding out a lot, or a lot of really uncomfortable sales calls later. So you have an idea, and you start talking to people. And what you're trying to find out, really, is a deep understanding of their problems. Like, above all else, you want to know what their pain points are. Like, what is just making them miserable? And don't stop at the surface level basics of things. Like, really drill down in there. You don't want to know that it's their software that they're working with to do all of the retail sales is just like kind of annoying. You want to find out like what is the annoying part about it. Like when they click something, like is it too slow? Is the user interface really shabby? Does it just make it hard for multiple employees to use it? Like what exactly is causing them problems here? And then when you get down to that, like go and actually try and use the website yourself and figure it out. You know, if the problem is that they're just like, I can't pull in more customers, it's like, well, where are your current customers coming from? You know, like what types of customers? What have you tried? Really try to just understand, like, try to put yourself as much as you can just in their problem. Like if you went to a convention of whatever it is that your customers do, you know, like a Crumpus convention, would they like assume that you were one of their own? Like another sales guy that I was reading was talking about doing crazy like huge level sales to oil companies, and he basically like got so far into it he was just going around giving presentations on the most efficient ways to like mine oil or whatever, drill oil, and like to the point where people were like, like where did you go and study geology? And he's like, I'm just a sales guy. Like I didn't actually study anything, but he like just drilled down there so deeply to try and understand what was going on that he was not only invited to make sales pitches, but actually like giving whole presentations on like the oil industry. So once you've gotten feedback, once you find out what their problems are, if you had an idea going into it, this is a really good time to pitch them on it. Now that you understand what their problems are, and you can like change it on the fly too. You don't need to like stick with whatever it was your preconceived notion was of this product. Be like, oh, I was thinking of this thing that does exactly what you were asking for because you just told me what you were looking for. Would you be interested in that? You know, and make a pitch. And like on a surprising amount of the time, people will just be like, yes, I would totally pay you money for that. And other times people are just like, no. And you're like, well, you just told me that's what you wanted. Like I just like said back to you what you said to me. And you're like, okay, well, what about it isn't good? And they'll be like, oh, well, the real problem is that we just don't have enough money to pay for any software, so we're just going with the cheapest solution. And you're like, okay, it's not that your software sucks, it's that you don't have enough money to even spend on software to begin with, really. And like you can kind of get to the heart of a lot of problems that way. So that pitch really, like, it's kind of the idea. We've gone over this in Cake before, too. The best way to get an indication of what people's future behavior is going to be is not asking them what their future behavior is going to be. It's actually a very poor indication of what people are going to do. Like, actually getting them to take the action that you want them to take is how you tell what they're going to do. Like, the closer you can get them to actually pulling out their wallet and handing you cash on the spot for something, that is what you want to understand. So doing that pitch at the end and saying, like, well, if I make this, will you pay me money for it? Actually kind of puts them on the spot and makes them really think about it. You know, before they were just kind of like, oh, yeah, I have these problems, I'm tossing them out there. It's like, well, will you pay me money to solve them? And they're like, oh, no, there's actually much deeper things going on here. So pitch it, and then once you get that advice back from what they've said, revise the product. Now, like, go back to the drawing board and take in, like, just soak in all of the conversations you've been having. You know, if you're spending half an hour per conversation, you're talking 4 hours a day on the phone, it's like 8 conversations you had with people. You really just, like, do have a lot of information to soak in. And then you revise it. And then you go back and you call more people, and you call back those same people and say, I took your feedback, and here's what I did with it, and now I'm thinking about incorporating this thing, and how does it sound to you now? And then you just kind of repeat that process over and over again, and eventually what you come up with is a product where people are like, yeah, if you had that, I'd pay you money for it, like I would pay you money right now for it. And once you have that, you've done the sales first. You switch that selling successfully to the first part, and now you go into product development. And now you do all of the research, and now you do all of the design, and now you actually make whatever it was that they wanted. And as we've talked about before, there's a lot of other cakes on actual product development, so we won't go into depth. But same thing with this. Like, don't try to develop your finished, end-of-the-line, perfect product. Get the loosest, like, cheapest, most piecemeal form of it that you can, slapped together, and send it off to them, because you know what their most extreme pain point is. Like, if they didn't say this thing has to look pretty for my employees, then don't make it look pretty. If they didn't say this has to do this, or like the spacing on this has to be exactly accurate, or it has to have no typos for it to be usable, then don't worry about the typos. Like, go and solve that 1 or 2 main pain points. And that's it. And if they're not willing to buy it, then you start slowly adding on those extra features until they actually are, once you have it, willing to pay you money. And so that's when the actual sales calls start happening, is like well into this. And really the sales calls started with that deep understanding. You just didn't call them sales calls. You're just calling up to say, hey, I just wanted to talk to you about things. Like, what's going on? What are your problems? And people love talking about their problems. So now that you have this product, where I start making the like what would be considered normal sales calls is the test group. So you've put together your service or your product or whatever it is, and now you want to get a test group for it. So your first sales call really is just saying, hey, like we may have talked, maybe you didn't, maybe you just had a ton of conversations with people in the field, and you can say, I talked to this person, and this person, been working to develop this thing, here's the feedback we've been getting. Everyone seems to really like the idea, and they should too. Like if you've actually been doing your market research well and talking to these customers, like you should have a really good idea of what their pain points are. And when you pitch it to them, they're like, oh yes, I really wish that problem would go away. And then you pitch them on selling it, or on joining this test group, on buying it. And so the test group one is just saying, hey, it's basically the next stage of customer development. We have this thing, in theory, we've got it already, but before we release it to the public, we want to give a group of 10 or 20 or 100 or 1,000 or whatever minimal group of people access to it for X amount cheaper than we're going to sell it for eventually. Like here's our eventual price, and you anchor high, right? You say the eventual price first because you know about anchoring, and then you launch into, and for half that price or for 2/3 that price, we're going to give you this thing if you want to come on and give us a lot of feedback and give us a written testimonial at the end of it and give us a video testimonial at the end of it. And then great. If you can sell people on that, then you know at the very least you can sell people on the idea in general, and hopefully you'll gain enough value over this next little cycle that you'll be able to up the price to what you eventually want to sell it at as well. And even if you don't, I mean, you just like make up a high price and then like discount it continuously down to whatever you wanted to do in the first place, which is no good. I don't recommend the eventual discount, but that is a backup plan. And then you go back and forth with them. They actually have the product in their hands. They're using it. You're getting feedback from them. They're not just like a sample group. This still isn't research and development in the strictest sense because they're still paying to be a part of it. You're still getting money from them. And then at the end, you get great testimonials. You get video testimonials. You get written testimonials. You throw that up into your site. You post it all over the place, and people can see other people in their industry being happy with whatever it is that you're doing. And that really, to me, is how you think sanely about sales, and how you make it not shiesty, and how you don't feel like a total tool going around and trying to sell people things, is like backload it. Like make your job when you make that final sales call so much easier because you already know exactly what's going on. You already know what people's problems are. You already have an audience who's really happy that you took the time to like talk to them, and they feel invested in the process. And so when you actually go to sell it, and you get to email everyone who's been a part of this and say, I listened to these ideas and incorporated these ones of yours, thank you so much. Like, who of those people isn't going to be totally happy to have been a part of that? And like very likely almost all of them will end up buying it from you when you're done. So let's back up a little bit and talk about what we didn't go over today, which is a lot of actual sales tactics and like how you talk to people and what you say and like the order you say it and how to address concerns, things like that. So really quickly, some tactics that we recommend are hear no 7 times before you take it seriously, because people's instinct to most things is just to say no to it. And familiarity has a lot to do with our willingness to accept something. And in general, it's kind of the 7 times to familiarity. You're supposed to kind of hear no 7 times before you finally give up on a lead or a contact. And it doesn't have to be annoying, like, okay, you want to buy it now? You know, it can be as simple as what we talked about with customer development, where you're calling them up and just saying, hey, I made these changes to it, like, based on your feedback. Would you know, does this sound like a good idea to you now? And they're like, no, I'm still not in the place where I'd consider buying that. And you're like, okay, well, like, what is wrong now? You know, and you take that feedback and go back to them. You need to tell people what to do. Big call to actions. Like, if you have a website and there's not an obvious button, it's usually just referred to in marketing as the big fucking button. Sitting there, like, that says, click me to do X, whatever it is that you want that to be, then something is wrong with your website. Like, then you are not directing people right, because people do not have very long attention spans, and there's a lot to look for. So, like, you need to make it very clear what you're offering, what's going on very quickly. And not just for websites, too. Like, even if someone just comes into your business, if you have a retail storefront and is talking to you, and they're like, oh, I'll think about that. Like, just be like, you just want to buy something now? Like, it's surprising how much that works. Like, people just need that, like, little script in their head to be cued that now they're in, like, the place where they can purchase something. So just being really obvious about it. And that's fine. Like, and if they're like, no, I don't want to buy something, then be like, well, why? Like, what's going on? And then you get to do that customer development model on the spot. List benefits, not features. So, like, who cares how whatever it is that you're offering gets something done, or what quality of lamb skin wool, like, your booties are that you're making for people. Like, you don't care about the quality of wool, you care about that it keeps you warm. You know, you don't care about, like, what inks went into your artwork, you care about the fact that it reflects beautifully in, like, any kind of lit environment. Talking about that end result, like what the effect is going to be, not the feature, is really key. Showing where the money is. There's lots of reasons that people buy things, you know, and there's in fact lists that people will say these are the 5 reasons, or 6 or 7, it usually oscillates between like 4 and 7 reasons that people buy things. But you know, it's like money, prestige, just showing like as a status symbol, sex. There's like, you can just kind of go through them. Social good is another less depressing one. But being able to show where the money is really powerful if you're doing anything related to saving people money. Like even if it's installing some kind of rainwater system, being able to show how much money they're going to save per month on that, and that your value is actually like greater for what you provide than what you're taking away in terms of immediate cash payment. If you can do that, even like laying it out for them on the back of something, really powerful. And the last thing is just the best sales pitches come through word of mouth, not through you. Often the best way to sell to someone is to reach the people around them. Even their secretary, if that ends up being the case, if they have one, you're doing some kind of crazy executive level sales. But if it's a retail shop, or if it's someone who, like if you're trying to get someone to sign on to partner with you for some kind of crazy masseuse deal that you're doing, going in and talking to all the staff there, or emailing the staff and just asking them about what's going on there, you know, and talking to them and making friends is a really good way to get to the owners too. And that goes back to just kind of this overall theme of one of the best ways to set up your sales process is to, like I said, backload those first 2 categories of making your product and marketing it. And we talked about the marketing process right here. That's the whole customer development. But it goes back further than that, and we've just talked about that so much before in Cake with minimum viable product and stuff. But the best way to make your sales job really easy is to have a good product to begin with. And that, I mean, yeah, it not only makes your job easier once you go to sell it and you're like, they're like, it does this, and you're like, yes, and they're like, great, I'll buy it. But also people who are really happy with their products, they end up talking about it. They become your salespeople. And like I said with this last point, that's the best way to sell something, is to have generated such a good pitch and such a good product that it's able to maintain its strength through those numbers and numbers of people that it's going through, like, you know, through customer A to customer B who buys it and passes it on to customer C. And if you can get that kind of fidelity of signal across your message, then you've done a really good job setting up what you actually want to be your overall sales pitch. And that's it. That's all I got for you guys today. The best way to learn more about specific sales tactics, if you're going to look into it, is just to go and look anywhere. Like, go and buy that sales book that you haven't been buying because it seemed shisty and you never really wanted to get into sales anyway. I have Selling for Dummies. I was just picking it up and looking at it recently. Really generally good advice. You know, it's talking about more of a conventional sales model of like making cold calls and getting prospects from a big business and going around and scheduling them and talking to them, and less from an entrepreneur's standpoint. But if you kind of take these ideas of the customer development model and then use the tactics of all of these general sales things from like, or really shisty, even like direct marketers and stuff going on to direct marketing forums is really interesting and informative. But just kind of take those tactics, and like, people are obsessed with sales. They will go through like, the customer said this, here's what I said, they did not buy, like, what did I do wrong, you know? And then like other marketers will come and just like tear it apart and analyze what could have gone better in this sale. And that'll help. But the biggest thing is just to remember that you're just trying to sell people on something they should want. And if you're not, then like, don't try to sell them. Like, find another customer or find another product. If you just end up feeling really bad or feeling like you're cheating people into buying what you're selling on a regular basis, then like, get out of there. Like, get something else, for the love of God. Thanks so much for coming to Cake. We'll be back in a little bit for a workshop, which we won't be filming. And again, definitely if you're watching and in Portland, come on down and join us for our last 2 cakes over the next couple weeks. Cheers, guys.